Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, hello. This is Sarah here again, and I have Matthew and Peter. We're all just so excited to be here once again to have this discussion. And we are, of course, a Miracles Meetup group. Well, we're a couple of the members of it that meet up in Durham region, which is about half an hour outside of Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. And we are meeting weekly now and having a lovely time, and new people are constantly coming to our group. And if you are listening from anywhere else in the world, I would highly suggest you look up the Foundation for Inner Peace and look up where there's a study group in your area, because you will find a wonderful bunch of people to connect with and learn from and get triggered from and learn some more from. So it's really cool. And I'm just going to read. I wrote something that I read at the beginning of our group meetings, and it just keeps us on course. So we are a Course in Miracles discussion group. Our goal is to promote positive, healthy discussions in line with A Course in Miracles that will expand members' consciousness. Our hope is that some of the things we discuss here today will become a part of your awareness each day until we speak again, so that each of us grows to new levels of awareness by allowing love into our hearts, lives, and daily interactions. Changing a fearful thought into a loving one is a true miracle. And as time goes by, we look forward to hearing your personal stories of how you have applied this to your life, how it affected you, and how it makes you feel to be healing and loving yourself. And I just think that's just a wonderful statement, if I do say so myself. And I just find that it puts us in the right frame of mind. And with that, I'm going to introduce Matthew first, because I sent him a message a few days ago and asked him if he would like to choose the topic for this evening. And he has chosen being vigilant for God and his kingdom. And he has a couple of things through the book that he's going to guide us through. So, Matthew, thank you so much for picking this topic for us this evening, and I really look forward to what you want to share with us.
Thank you. So I was thinking about how one of the steps in salvation is, of course, being vigilant only for God and his kingdom, as the text indicates. And this idea is first introduced in chapter 6, section 5, and there's a section C. And I think we can address that, but there's also a section right in the final chapter of the text which brings us back to this idea of being vigilant only for God and his kingdom. And I think it summarizes really well how we only have one of two choices to make for peace and the thought system of the Holy Spirit, or the thought system of the ego. So I would like to start with this chapter 31, section 7, paragraph 14. Just one moment. It says, "Be vigilant against temptation, then remembering that it is but a wish, insane and meaningless, to make yourself a thing that you are not. And think as well upon the thing that you would be instead. It is a thing of madness, pain and death, a thing of treachery and black despair, of failing dreams, and no remaining hope except to die, and end the dream of fear. This is temptation, nothing more than this. Can this be difficult to choose against? Consider what temptation is, and see the real alternatives you choose between. There are but two. Be not deceived by what appears as many choices. There is hell or heaven, and of these you choose but one." So, of course, right in the first sentence, it's be vigilant against temptation. So the Course, I guess, has a few different ways of putting this idea of being, vigilant only for God and His kingdom, meaning to always keep God and His kingdom within your mind, or to always turn our focus and attention to our right-minded thinking rather than the wrong-minded thinking. In the case of this paragraph here, in chapter 31, it says, be vigilant against temptation. So in that case, it means be vigilant against the ego, or be vigilant towards the ego. And, for me, this has been a really important lesson in the specific form that it takes here in the text for me, because it's about, in a sense, remaining conscious of which teacher we're always listening to. And, I'm going through a current stage in my own learning where it becomes very, agonizing might be a good word to describe when I know that I've dropped Jesus' hand. I can feel it. I can feel the anguish that comes with choosing the ego, and it feels so painful that it's, it's becoming just the only logical choice to choose the Holy Spirit. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity when that sensation of, the idea of the ego comes into my mind, because it's so strong in a sense, and it's so heavy in a sense, that I know that I just want to choose again. I know that I want to choose a better way. And this idea of being vigilant, always being conscious of what thoughts we're choosing, what teacher we're listening to, and what emotions we're experiencing, that's really been the key for me in unlocking my inner teacher, is paying attention to what am I actually experiencing on an emotional level. And if I'm experiencing these, what may be called lower vibrational thoughts or negative thoughts, they transmute as, negative feelings of heaviness, and sometimes described as despair and anguish and hatred and things of that nature, anger. And to just kind of release those, to stop resisting them and just allow them to move through my experience and be released to higher power, to be released to the Holy Spirit. And for me, that idea of being vigilant for those emotions and having the willingness to release them is having an incredible influence and effect on my experience as how I perceive the world. And it becomes a lot more peaceful and freeing when I know I have the choice to always release these emotions. And that's my current contribution to this idea. That's why I chose it, because it's what I'm currently experiencing.
That's really awesome. And, I tell you, I got cut off and I had to jump back in, so I don't know how much I've actually missed, but Peter, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, so could you comment in so that I can feel more like I know what's going on? Thank you.
Okay. I think sometimes the word temptation has a certain meaning for a lot of people, and right away for me at least, temptation seems like it's something that I choose because I want certain things. So I'm tempted to do to engage in certain activities, or I'm tempted to go after certain things in the world because they seem tempting and they seem like they will give me a certain sense of satisfaction or whatever. And yet, I think the broader use, at least in the Course in Miracles, is that temptation is something that occurs any time where our thinking is tempted to go in a certain direction which fear would suggest. And the funny thing about it is that while we may not think that being tempted of the good things in the world, whether it's money or cars or anything else, would have any inherent pain to it, the fact is that in choosing things of the world to substitute for love, we choose things that are always temporary and passing and will never last and have no inherent security built into them. So when we're tempted to go after things in the world as a substitute for the Holy Spirit and as a substitute for love, we in fact create fear in our own mind unconsciously because of the value we put upon these things, while at the same time on a deeper level realizing that they can never truly satisfy us. So that's one way that temptation shows up. And I guess the other temptation is that oftentimes when we see something and our fears and our anger or our resentment or whatever comes to the forefront, then we are tempted to somehow feel that we need to protect ourselves in certain situations and to respond outwardly towards a threat in a way in which we become defensive and which we become where we try and be more controlling so that we regain whatever power we think we may have lost. And so for myself, again, I recognize that the voice of the ego really operates both in a protective way and in a way of suggesting that it's okay to be tempted by the good things in the world and that there's nothing wrong with it. And yet ultimately, I think what's important to recognize is that our truest, deepest need is always to have a sense of peace and a sense of safety and a sense of comfort, and that as long as we're looking outside ourselves for that, either to get something or to control something, that we're listening to the voice of the ego. And so by recognizing clearly where the ego is pointing us and where the Holy Spirit points us, it makes it a lot easier to make that choice again. Who do I listen to? Do I listen to the voice that suggests I do something about the world out there, or do I listen to the voice deep within, which first of all gives me a sense that I'm safe and gives me a sense that I need not fear? And it's only in connecting with that voice and that inner certainty of being safe and that on some level all is well that I can then go out into the world and in a sense extend that same recognition that love is within and that God is within and that we need but seek that first and all else will be added.
You know, it's interesting. I'm listening to you, and I'm just totally absorbing everything and admiring both of the wisdom that comes out of both of you guys. And it's interesting because I had an experience this week where a lot of really painful emotions got brought up. And in the past, when I wasn't being vigilant for God and His kingdom, I would maybe try to think of, okay, if I go have a glass of wine, that'll help it. And or let me go shopping because, there's probably some, perfect, book, piece of clothing, new shoes, something that's going to make me feel better. So I was always, in the old days, I would do that. And exactly what you're saying is, you get home and, you feel just as crappy, only now you might have spent who knows how much money on, and then you're looking at this thing you bought thinking, or you wake up in the morning with hangover and, that's no fun either. It's interesting because when I saw be vigilant for God and Him, I wasn't thinking about, all this temptation and all this stuff, because to me, I feel like I've got to this place now where I'm constantly trying to, give out good stuff. If someone cuts me off in traffic, I try to, if I do get a negative thought go through my mind about the driver, I'll try to make it a nice thought instead. So I'm really working on that. So for me, being vigilant for God and His kingdom is to continually try to find that happiness, that peaceful feeling, that goodness. And I think, Peter, you said it good too, is, or you said it well. Boy, that's good grammar there, isn't it? But, to let to allow yourself to just be real and be imperfect and have conversations with strangers and smile and say hello and open a door. And, to me, so it's so interesting because now, to me, when I was, writing that we were going to talk about this, these are all the things that I was thinking about in the vigilance. And Yeah, so Matthew, what do you got to say about that?
Yeah, so being vigilant isn't so much to be ready to change our specific thoughts. Being vigilant, being in a state of miracle readiness, or being ready to forgive, which translates into being ready to release whatever experience that we're having that might, temporarily bring us away from peace. And so when we're vigilant, it means we're always paying attention to what our current experience is. And we're always allowing the Holy Spirit into our mind so that whatever disharmony that we have within it may be healed. So vigilance is really a state of willingness. Being vigilant is really a state of willingness to have that allowing for a right-minded thought system to become activated when we fall out of it.
If I might jump in there, I think interesting. Sorry, and you can get right back to where you're at, Matthew, but you had said something really wonderful, which was forgive them ahead of time. So can you tell us how that ties in with the vigilant part of it, please?
Yeah, of course. That's the willingness. So I'll just read our paragraph here and then maybe amplify it or expand it. Being vigilant only for God means that we are in a state of miracle readiness. That is, we are always ready to forgive. Forgiveness means that we give ahead of time. Forgive, so giving into the future. Meaning that we're ready to forgive before we get upset or before we make it real in our mind. Meaning, before we emotionalize it and start creating some storyline about how upsetting this situation is, right? We can transcend that entirely, and the more and more we become masterful of this skill set of forgiveness, the less and less we fall into that storyline. That we are ready to hand our grievances over to the Holy Spirit before we make them real in our mind. That is, before we emotionalize them and allow them to be projected onto the world. It is critical that we remember the truth that is within and have the willingness to shift our perception of old belief systems that no longer serve our best interests. Through the power of God and His kingdom, it becomes possible to remember the truth that is within each of us and our brothers. Vigilance is required to correct all of the false perceptions within the mind.
Okay, so Peter, do you want to tell us what that makes you think of, please?
Thank you. I've also been lately studying work very similar to the Course in Miracles, and one of the things that I'm beginning to see at a deeper level is this understanding about what love really is, and in perhaps having a deeper understanding what love really is, it also allows me to understand more deeply what choosing the Holy Spirit is. And in this other text that I've been reading, it talks about the quality of love is that it allows all things, embraces all things, and sets all things free. And it's unconditional. And because it's unconditional, it makes absolutely no demands on whatever rises into consciousness. So when we begin to choose the Holy Spirit, which, another way of putting it, when we begin to choose love, we begin to enter into a state where we begin without judgment to embrace whatever rises in our awareness, without trying to change it, without trying to make it better, without adding anything to it, except this open spaciousness and awareness that because it embraces all things, at the same time transforms all things, but it transforms it because we're not trying to do anything, which is where the ego always comes in, trying to do something and change something. So oftentimes, at least lately in my own experience, what I've been noticing is simply a state of, you could call it sadness or disappointment or anxiety or a certain amount of despair. And my challenge has been to see how much can I sit with this, how much can I simply be with whatever thoughts arise as I'm feeling that way, and yet at the same time simply observing it without judgment, and finding that somehow in embracing whatever feelings come up, whatever emotions, thoughts come up, and being gentle with all of it, that somehow it begins to lighten. Somehow, in spite of the fact that the feelings are still there, I don't feel as trapped. And I'm beginning to recognize that sometimes, at the beginning at least, the practice is simply to learn to be with whatever is there and to take time to be with it until such a time as we're inspired to move on or whatever. So as I allow that, then a different quality of thought arises on its own because of the fact that the spaciousness is present. A different way of being arises on its own, but it seems to have a different quality, that it's not my doing and it's not my thinking that wherein these thoughts arise, but that they simply arise because I've learned to relax and to surrender.
Okay, thank you for that, Peter. And you know what? I'm watching the time here. Okay, so we have 8 more minutes. And Matthew, I know you had part of something that you had wanted to. Did you get to everything you wanted to out of the course? Because if not, now's your chance.
But there's a continuation in Chapter 6. But I think the first step in miracle readiness is just, as Peter's describing, is that willingness to observe what we're experiencing in any given moment. And as we get more and more practiced in that, we feel more and more comfortable to not only observe what's happening within us, but also to start allowing it to be released little by little, just kind of one crumb at a time. And it's different for everyone's experience. It's personal for every individual in how much they're willing to release, how much they're willing to let go. And I think it's important just to keep that in mind, that idea that I can be a little bit willing to release whatever it is that I'm currently experiencing. Just a little bit. And with that little bit, we begin to allow this safety and comfort into our mind that gives us the strength to release a little bit more and a little bit more. And it does sort of turn into this snowball effect at times where forgiveness does become automatic. I've certainly experienced that from time to time, and it's kind of like a taste of what a permanent state of forgiveness is like, where we're kind of forgiving in real time and we don't need to sit with things any longer because we just automatically hand it all over to the Holy Spirit. And that's a wonderful sensation, and it's certainly where everyone ultimately achieves as they continue this spiritual work and this forgiveness practice. And I think the other key thing that Peter identified is the idea of gentleness. And for me, that's been so important, is just not judging myself for how long things seem to be taking. And, patience plays a role in that as well. And being gentle with how things appear to unfold and just accepting. The Holy Spirit accepts things as they are. There's nothing to be changed. When we're truly identified as Spirit, we understand that we're only moving from one state of perfection to the next state of perfection. There's no incompletion. There's nothing to seek and find. The idea of seeking to find is the ego's mantra, as the Course teaches us. The ego thinks to seek and do not find, because it's continuously searching, and when it does get something that it wants, it only brings temporary satisfaction. And it's been my personal experience that the more and more I search for those external things, it's beginning to bring so much, pain in psychologically, that it's not even appealing anymore to search outside of myself for things. And I think everyone has to follow that sort of process where it's not that they feel that they have to forgive, but they actually want to forgive. They actually want to release their grievances. It's kind of like quitting smoking. I experienced this myself. I had to actually want to quit smoking before it worked. When I tried quitting just because I thought it was bad for me, it didn't work. But when I finally made the decision that I just didn't want to anymore, it was really, it was relatively easy. And yeah, that's my reflection.
Well, what I think is interesting is, when you're talking about, the acceptingness of it and being miracle ready, and something that I've experienced just recently, and it might be a little bit off, but I feel like I should mention it because it is something I'm going through, which means if I'm going through it, there's probably who knows how many thousands of other people going through the exact same thing, because it's amazing how, the universe works. But it's interesting how you can be in your state of perfect, you find this thing and you're just so happy with it. And then there's going to come a time where it's going to be falling away from your life. And it can be kind of hard because you can get so attached to this, this is what I've done and I've invested this time and energy, and people see me as this is what I do, or, this is what I have, this is who they expect me to be. I kind of was comfortable there. But what's amazing is when you are miracle ready and you open yourself and just, really trust, then the next best step for you will come along. And I'm kind of going through that in my life, and I saw this post and it was fantastic, and it was a woman who'd been a baker for 40 years, and she said, I was so into baking. I wrote 27 books and had a TV show and all this, and one day I picked up a paintbrush and I never baked again, but I love painting. So imagine how in that one moment, that shift just, she didn't question it. Just in that one day, boom, let it be. This is what feels like magic or music in my heart, or it feels right. And, it's pretty cool because, when you're living it, it can be scary, but you have to have that faith and that trust. And, I have zero fear. I'm in a more precarious situation probably than I've ever been in my life, and I don't have fear. And I kind of giggle at that sometimes because it just feels like love. So we'll probably have down to a couple minutes now. Anyone want to say something very brief, though?
Just one.
Are you still there?
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, just having that willingness, as you're describing, Sarah, to be free and to look at the situation and just release it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I find that when something is right for you and you're kind of holding on to the old, the universe will be so gentle about it and so kind, but it won't give up, because if you have your ultimate calling, and and it can change as the years go by, if something else comes along. So yeah, just being ready and trusting that what is unfolding is exactly what's meant to be, and it's perfect in that moment. And I love how you said that, it's perfection in every moment, or you said something similar to that, right? Yep. So maybe we should all just do our, I think I love this when we're all hey, so bye Matthew and bye Peter.
See you.
Bye Sarah. Bye Matthew.
Okay. Gotta have some laughter in here somehow, right? Okay, so thanks for listening, everyone, and keep smiling, and we hope to hear from you or see you around sometime. So take care. Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.